Hello everyone and welcome to another video and what is the first episode of a mini-series I'd like to call Things I Bought So That You Don't Have To. In this one we're taking a look at this custom graphics card that I found online for about £3. I purchased this so that none of you unfortunate souls have to face the burden of trying to use this to game, because from my experience over the last couple of days it has been absolutely diabolical. You've probably seen this card on the channel before, we have tested it before. We didn't really do that much of an in-depth test on it because by the end of the day I was so fed up with this thing that I just wanted to put it in the bin and go to sleep. But today we'll be taking a look at some older games, how they run, and first let's take a look at the item description before I reveal exactly what this thing is. So the description states custom cooler entry level graphics card. Fair enough, it's certainly a custom cooler. I think it's been spray painted, which I didn't think was a good idea, but I believe the properties of spray paint change once it's dry, so it's not flammable. I mean, the heatsink has been directly painted here. It's not the best job in the world, but things should be fine. It shouldn't set the system on fire, which, as you probably know, is always a bonus when you're trying to run some of your favourite games. No one wants a house fire when they're trying to play Fortnite with 60 frames per second. Speaking of which, the description then states that the previous owner used it to play GTA and Fortnite. It then goes on to state that the card could probably be used to run Red Dead Redemption with the lowest settings. No, it can't, and believe me, it really can't. It then finalises by saying the heatsink has been painted to match the old owner's last PC, which again is fair enough. It does look pretty good. So just what is this thing? Well, it's an NVIDIA NVS 310. You can still buy these new, they're pretty bad. Last time we tested it we tried a few newer games and as expected we were getting about 10 to 20 frames per second most of the time, but today we're going to give it a fair chance, see how it holds up in some older games. But we're also going to be testing the aforementioned Red Dead Redemption 2. I've already tested it, I should let you know, and spoiler alert, it's unbearable, but this is to be expected. I wouldn't have tested it if it wasn't mentioned, but let's get into it and I'll show you exactly why this thing is best avoided. Don't purchase it unless you want a basic display adapter for an old workstation or home desktop. So as you can see, I put this in a case with my i5-12400F system. I found this case with an old CEX PC the other day and I decided to keep it for the time being because it looks pretty cool. The first game I decided to try out was Bioshock Infinite, and if there's one thing that's not infinite here, it's the frame rate. This topped out at around 60-65 FPS, but the performance was much worse than that when there were enemies on screen. Now I couldn't record using my capture card because that only supports HDMI inputs, and unfortunately the NVS 310 only has 2 DVI display outputs, so yeah, it's not a brilliant start considering the age of Bioshock Infinite, but let's move on and try another classic, Modern Warfare 2. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, the original, in case you're watching this after the new Modern Warfare 2 releases, well, it runs with over 60 frames per second and I'm surprised people are still playing it in 2022, but it's a very welcome surprise. The card had no trouble. Next up we have GTA 4, and I sincerely hope that Roman does not call and want to go bowling because I cannot fathom bowling at 15 frames per second. I mean, I'm bad enough at the sport anyway, so to bowl at such a low frame rate would severely impede my performance. As you can see here, we're taking a gentle drive around one of the first areas in the game, one of the best GTAs in the series in my opinion. Only it's not when played on the NVS. It's a good effort from the card, we are getting at least 20 frames per second in some spots, but overall the stutter makes it pretty much unbearable. This card has 1 gig of VRAM and it shows. Now here's the Red Dead Redemption 2 result. Well, actually, I'm so surprised it runs at all. I mean, we couldn't adjust any of the in-game graphical settings because there is a limitation from the in-game options menu. If you exceed the VRAM, you can't save the settings. I could have gone into the INI file and sort of tried to tweak a few things, but it really wasn't worth it. I mean, not even low-spec gamer could turn 3 FPS into 30. and that's saying something. Let's move on then to our next title. I didn't even have benchmark figures for this one because you can tell it's just an absolute mess. Fortnite, on the other hand, this was also mentioned in the description of this card, and well, I am very surprised. Since the introduction of the performance mode in this game, I have found that it runs on a wider range of low-end cards, and when I tested the MVS 310 a couple of months ago in the cheapest graphics card you can still buy new video, I couldn't actually get this working. So I'm really surprised. Maybe it's the custom white painted cooler. Maybe that's the secret to unlocking your graphics card's maximum potential. Solid piece of advice. Yeah, Fortnite is absolutely fine. I mean, the graphics don't look brilliant, but if you have to sacrifice that in order to play with a smooth frame rate, it's most certainly worth it. And I really was shocked to see that this game runs on such a terrible gaming card. A card that's not intended for gaming, so you know, it's not really fair to call it a terrible gaming card when that's not really its purpose. Okay, so CSGO, or what it stands for in this case, is probably completely stuttery graphics obliterated. Having said that though, the graphics still look okay at low with 800 by 600 resolution. I've heard a lot of pros play at this resolution, and well, I can now add myself to the ranks of the League players. I wish. Next up, Team Fortress 2, 800 by 600 yet again, lowest settings in game, over 100 FPS this time around, which was a very nice surprise. It certainly is a card that's capable of some old school retro gaming, that is for sure, and considering I paid about £3, I can't complain too much. Again, when we consider that this really isn't a gaming card, well, I guess it would be a bit harsh to call it completely terrible. Everything has a purpose, and if it's priced right, it can be hard to complain. Finally then, and you've seen this benchmark in the previous video, GTA 5, I thought I'd test it again just to see if there was some sort of miraculous improvement, considering Fortnite decided to run this time, but not really. 30 or so FPS with half of 800 by 600 resolution, so we're basically running at 400 by 300 internally. That's not too bad considering that GTA can still be quite demanding on older hardware, but I am thankful for the fact that we can choose such low graphical settings, and of course we can adjust the API as well. So this is running at DX10 mode instead of DX11. DX11 is the max the card supports. Overall then, the NVS 310, if you can buy one for £3, well, it really isn't bad if you want to play some lightweight esports games or a few older releases, but apart from that, I certainly wouldn't recommend it. What I would recommend though is leaving a like on this video if you enjoyed it, leaving a dislike if you didn't, subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already, and as always, I hope to see you all in the next one. Thank you for watching.